Hey everyone. In this episode, we sit down with Carol Hamilton of Grace Social Sector Consulting. In our conversation, we explore the power of delegation so we can focus on what truly matters to each of us. We learn about Carol's journey in the social impact sector, driven by her experiences growing up with a brother with disabilities, and explore the themes of confidence, personal agency, as well as strategic planning. We also discuss the importance of reflection, asking for help, and what it means to listen to our bodies. From talking about personality assessments to practicing the art of receiving and the benefits of asking for help, this episode will encourage you to live a life that aligns with your truest self. Enjoy. Hi there. Welcome to the Empowered and Embodied Show. I'm Kim Romaine.
And I'm Louise Neal. We're two transformational coaches who are also fellow travelers on the path of growth and self-discovery. And we're inviting you along for the ride.
That's right. We're right here in the trenches with you, navigating the ups and downs of life. And each week we'll be sharing our own experiences, bringing you conversations with amazing guests, and exploring insights and strategies that have helped us find more clarity, confidence, and ease in our lives.
And trust us, we do not have it all figured out. We're learning and growing right alongside you.
So if you're ready to rise above the chaos, doubt, and confusion that sometimes life throws our way,
and step into a more empowered and embodied version of yourself,
then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Well, hello, everybody. We are so glad you're here today. I am Kim.
And I'm Louise.
And today we're joined by
Carol.
Carol, we're so glad that you're here with us, and we're going to let the world know all about you in just a minute. But we want to start our conversation out this week, how we start every week. What are we celebrating this week?
I love it. I've missed this. I've missed this question Fridays. And so I'm really happy to share. I am celebrating this. I'm here at the lake this week working location independent from, well, I would like to say around the world, but at least around the province. And it's been really fun and enjoyable for me to be able to weave work into life and life into work in a way that feels really, really good to me, not having one thing crash over the other. So I'm celebrating that. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun and a lot of learning too, which has been great. But Carol, how about you? What are you celebrating this fine day?
Fine day. Yes, it is a fine day. I am celebrating a couple different things. I recently hit a significant milestone with my podcast, Mission Impact. I hit 100 episodes. And then this morning, I was actually working on the script for my 4-year podiversary. Actually going to end up being 2 episodes with invited all my guests to send in a clip about how might they envision a healthier nonprofit sector, which is what I focus on. So celebrating those 2 milestones with the podcast has been really exciting.
Oh, I love that.
So good. And the work that you're doing in the world is so important. So
well, thank you.
Sweet spot for me as well. So I'm excited to hear about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess for me, what I'm celebrating is leaning into uncomfortable conversations. I feel like we're living in an ever-growing time of having the opportunity to have uncomfortable conversations. And I won't say they're getting easier in the sense that they're still really, really uncomfortable. And yet it's getting easier to step into that opportunity. And so having that, having had several of those in the last couple of days, I am celebrating that. I'm celebrating that, right? We have that opportunity to learn. We have that opportunity to lean in, have conversations that are uncomfortable, but respectful, right? We can, go to those places of, it could feel crunchy, it can feel bad. We may get a little bit heated, but always being able to step back and recognize that all of the parties are coming from a place of learning and respect, and being able to say, okay, this was really uncomfortable, and what part of it do I have to own and learn from and step away from with something greater than I stepped into it from the beginning. So that's what I'm celebrating today.
Good.
Yeah, good stuff.
Good.
So, Carol, you gave a little nod to kind of what you do. I'm going to share a little bit more, and then we'll dive into our conversation for the day. So Carol Hamilton is the principal of Grace Social Sector Consulting, LLC, and host of Mission Impact Podcast, which she shared about, and it's very exciting to hear about all of the things happening over there. She helps organizations and teams become more strategic and aligned for greater mission impact. She facilitates strategic planning, evaluation design, and organizational assessments for nonprofits and associations. Carol, we are so glad you're here as part of this conversation today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be with you.
Yay.
What brought you into the social impact area, that sector? What drove you there? Or have you always been there?
Almost always. So pretty early on in my career, but right out of college, I ended up working for a company way back in the day that helped people get on talk shows. And so, did the publication coordination, but also wrote a lot of material. It was basically advertorial for a lot of self-help authors, but then the whole spectrum of folks, because it was a for-profit company, and so we took all comers. And after that, I realized, if I want to be promoting these different missions, if I've through that experience, I kind of learned, okay, I've got some skills there. Let me do it for missions that I believe in. But even before that, I would say probably I am the younger sister of a person with a disability. My brother is deaf, autistic, and intellectually disabled. And I think just growing up his younger sister just made me aware of the many ways in which the world was not built for him. And, the supports weren't there. And so just more aware of those things that kind of led me to let me be part of the solution instead of just complaining about what's not working.
So do you feel like, from your bio and just from like that little bit that you shared with us, have you always felt like that confident and in control of things? Because it sounds like, right, podcast, great mission and vision. Tell us a little bit more about it seems like you've got your shit together. That's really what I want to ask.
I try to pretend that, at least, I try to pretend. No, for sure not. I mean, I think it's interesting because your new the new emphasis of the podcast around being empowered, around being, and then that connection to being embodied as well. I was thinking a lot about it today, and in some ways, very much so from the very beginning, right? Like I was. I don't know, to date me, I'm to give some context, I'm the same age as Kamala Harris. So shout out to Gen X. And, so I was definitely a tomboy growing up. So very, physical, played sports and had the opportunity, like Title IX came in when I was growing up. In fourth grade was the first year that Little League, where I lived, allow girls to play on teams. So I was one of two girls who played on a baseball team, and had the great luck to have some wonderful coaches that we ended up being the winning team. And so all of that, I was a kid, I was a kid who got picked for kickball, so that kind of, I think gave me a connection and feeling, confident in my body and all of that. But there are many ways in which it hasn't been so. So, I mentioned my brother and growing up with him, his needs were paramount in the family. He was the center of the attention, focus. And so I had to kind of, figure it out for myself and also, women are trained to being in that helping position. And it was like that on steroids when you're the younger sister of somebody like that. So I think it's a double-edged sword, if you will, or I kind of feel like I tack back and forth between the two. So, yeah.
It's interesting because that tacking back and forth that you just mentioned, I feel like that is that space where so many folks get stuck, right? It's oh, I went back to not feeling confident, right? I lost my mojo. What's wrong with me? Do you ever get stuck in that space of like, oh, how did I end up here again? Not feeling confident.
Oh my God, yes. I mean, how many, I would say at least every 8 weeks I have an existential crisis about,
Just 8 weeks?
just what's the purpose of life and all of it. But and I, for a lot of time in my career, I was somebody that was, had kind of behind the scenes kind of roles, and that kind of fit with that trajectory that I kind of was on from childhood of like, you're the helper, you're, keep an eye on your brother, all that kind of stuff. Did well in school, and so was confident in that way, but then also pretty comfortable being behind the scenes, didn't want to be the center of attention. And so it's over the course of my career that I've been able to step into, or decided that I wanted to step out of kind of the wings and, actually move in and be visible. So doing the podcast actually was a big, big step in that direction.
It's so interesting. So I, through college and a little bit after college, I was in the theater world for quite some time. And I was a director, and I was a stage manager and a production manager. And in the few times that I was on stage, I loved it. It was enjoyable. I didn't have a huge problem being visible in that way. And yet I much preferred being the stage manager. I loved stage managing. It was my show. That was my baby. And there, I think we often dilute the amount of power we have when we are quote unquote behind the scenes.
Oh yeah, the behind the scenes can be, if if you're doing it right, you're the puppet master, and you've got you're directing things. But in terms of being on stage, I played the trumpet, so I was in band. But I was in band anyway. I think maybe once I had a solo. Right, I was a ensemble player. So. But yeah, there are definitely aspects of being behind the scenes that, and I still play on those, today. Yeah.
Yeah. Particularly as a consultant, right? I know when we step into that space, when we're consulting, when we're guiding, when we're mentoring, it's not about us.
No.
And yet there's a lot of empowerment that comes from embodying who we are in those spaces.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Louise, what do you think about all this?
Well, Carol, you said something really interesting too, where I think you said like being in choice, right? Like being in a place where it's like, you know what? Now's the time I actually do want to like step up a little. And especially when we build our businesses or we're building our careers, right? Like there's a moment, I think, I know for me anyways, that I had where it was like, I could continue kind of like playing this small game, right? And being, I could be okay over here, yet I want to be over there. And so it's that actual like that shift or that recognition to say like, there are actually things I get to do that is going to take me in a different direction. That's going to allow me to kind of step out of maybe that role that was that I thought I had to play and into a role where I want to play. And you said that, right? Like that there was this shift or this moment for you?
Yeah, it was, as I was thinking about, I guess every time I moved from one organization to another, I do some assessment around, okay, what did I enjoy doing? What do I want to continue doing? What do I want to let go of? And I realized over time that some of my peak experiences at work were some of the things that I guess some people groan when there's like, okay, we're going to have an offsite, but I love them. Strategic planning, I love it. And, having been in those conversations when they're well designed and they really help people step up and have different conversations that they have every day, and then being in a room where seeing someone doing it and facilitating that and doing that really well. And I was like, oh, I want to do that. And so started taking steps to figure out how can I move closer to that. And the first step was moving out of marketing and communications and into learning and development. And, at first I was still kind of behind the scenes. I was managing the department. I was working with volunteers to have them, redesign the training that we were doing. But I think it was when I started stepping into actually being facilitating some of those learning experiences and being part of a team that was at the front of the room where I started having to really grapple with, at first, for sure, a little imposter syndrome of, am I, can I do this? But one of my top strengths, it doesn't always come out in the top 5 with the Clifton strengths, is command, and so I use that sometimes in front of the room. And I also inherited my dad's. I can be very loud if I want to be. That voice can be there.
Oh, those tricky Clifton strengths.
Yep.
Man, my number 1 is strategic, and I fought it forever. I was like,
Oh,
I don't
really?
want that to be my number 1. And I leaned into it. And I was like, oh no, this is actually really cool. This
Yeah.
is a really, really cool place to be. Like,
Yeah.
because it's I have strategic, ideation, and empathy as my top 3. It's like, figure out how those 3 go together, and you get Kim.
Yeah. For sure.
Well, so I'm curious about that dance between this passion of yours for strategic planning, which I can obviously understand now. But how do we find our own level of personal agency through the lens of, I'd love to hear it through the lens of strategic planning. Like, when we think about ourselves, how could we utilize something like strategic planning to help us find our own personal agency, to step into that place of empowerment?
Yeah. As you said before, when I'm working with clients, it's not about me, right? It's about helping them figure out what they want to do, how they want to move forward, and, helping them have a group conversation to, make those decisions. But a couple of years ago, I realized, well, I'm doing this with clients. Let me actually apply some of my own tools to myself. And so I have a pretty, some people might say it's a little obsessive reflection practice where I do something each day, weekly, monthly, quarterly, every 6 months. And so having, with that kind of weekly practice, it gives me the set of data to look at for then every 6 months to really step back and say, okay, what's going on? What are the patterns? How do I want to move forward? And, actually having a written document where this is my 3-year vision and this is where I want to, this is where we will be in whatever X number of years from now. So taking the time to actually apply those things that you can do at an organizational level to a personal level has been, it's been fun. And because I like it, it's fun for me to do that too.
Yeah, I've thought too about, like, how do I be like my own CEO? Like, not just of my business, but like, how do I be the CEO of my life? Right? How do I want to be running my life? How do I want to be showing up in my life? Kim, you mentioned, like, and Carol too, like our strengths, like those are all tools that can help us show up differently in different areas of our life, but it's still us, right? Like, it's like, I often imagine like putting on all of these different kinds of like the C-suite hats. Like, I'm the CFO in this moment. And so this is my strength that serves me best in this moment. And I'm the COO when I have to like put shit into gear and like get stuff done. And so like we can be all of these people in different moments without like splitting apart. How do we keep things together? And so how we can be all of these people, do all of these things, have all of these strengths without feeling like we're not ourselves or that we're falling apart.
Yeah, I think something that I could strengthen is doing all of that visioning and planning more holistically. So not just about work, and I do it to some extent, but I think really putting that front and center could be something to kind of expand on. But I think one thing that I've been grappling with recently is what are the things that I actually don't need to be doing. And where could I find help? I mean, again, growing up, brother of a sister of a brother, like I'm not good at, have not had practice, do not have muscle memory around asking for help. I did it all I was on my own to get stuff done, right? So that is something I'm actively unlearning, and so really thinking about, what are the things each day in that daily practice? One of the new questions is, okay, what could I have delegated?
Yeah. It's one of my favorite tools to work with some of my clients on is what are 3 things you can ask for help with today? So like at the beginning of the day, thinking about your day ahead and you're
okay, now you're pushing me.
I know. Woo, here we go. It's really fun. And I will tell you, there are days where I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to ask for help. There's nothing I can, and there's always something. And so just to think about, right, even sending a text to a friend and saying, hey, I could just really use some help thinking through this thing, or, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be huge. It could be just, I need to remember to go drink water. Can you just send me a text midday and ask how much I've had to drink? Like whatever that is. So that's one part of it. And the other part of kind of what I heard with this, like, how do we synthesize this? How do we synthesize the data? That to me gets to that place of embodiment. Right? Because it's the bridge. It's where we get to say, now we have the data. Now we know where we want to be, how we want to get there, how we've been doing so far. And how do we then move it into our body, literally into our bodies, so that we are able to know what we can let go of and know what we need to hold on to, because our bodies will tell us really quickly what we need to let go of if we're listening.
Yeah, and it's fine tuning, being able to really listen, because I don't know about you, but generationally, culturally, feelings were not a thing. So learning that as an adult has been a journey as well.
For sure. And I know it is for a lot of people, right? I did grow up with a mom who we always talked about feelings and emotions, and I'm very emotionally driven. So that part of it, I can do that all day, but even that is removed from what do I actually need, right? Because we can get distracted by our emotions versus knowing it's, oh, I feel really low energy when I even think about doing X, Y, and Z. Is that something I could get help with? Or is there a way I could do it that would boost my energy? So, right, even looking at it from that lens, I think is kind of cool.
Yeah. There's feelings and then there's feelings, right?
There's feelings and then there's what we feel, our sensations.
Like, there's feelings, emotions, and then there's feelings, sensations. That's interesting. Right. We use the same word for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, English.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But we talked about Clifton strengths, and one other thing occurred to me in kind of this evolution is when I first took it, and this was probably 15 years ago, responsibility was in my top 5. And as you know, in around that time, I was in graduate school for organization development, and I remember one class where we were talking about kind of different avatars. So responsibility was on one end and martyr was on the other side. So like the pole, and that just hit me like a ton of bricks. And realizing, kind of starting to unpack the impact that it had, that being a sibling of a person with a disability had on me. I actually decided the next time I take this test, responsibility is not going to be in my top 5. I'm letting it go. Doesn't mean that I am an irresponsible person now. It just means now that I at least strive to not be overly responsible and sucking up everybody else's responsibilities. So allow them to have their agency and allow me to have mine. Yeah. And keep those boundaries.
I love this conversation because it's like we take these assessments and we do these tests and we think like this is who we are, right? And it can give us data. This is who I am in this moment. But like you said, Carol, it's like we get to shed that. Like if there's something that we want to change, we do get to do that. We get to change the outcome of almost any assessment that we can take when we're really intentional about like how we want to show up in the world. And we do get to change that. We don't have to carry those stories or those beliefs of who we were with us. We can put something down and pick something new up.
So to that point, my husband literally flipped his entire 16 personalities.
Say more.
So, and I mine has changed over the years, but my husband used to be an INTJ, and he is now an ESNPT. Something like that. ENSP at the end, not P, not T. Sorry. ESTP. There it is. Geez, that took me a minute because like I never had heard of this thing before. I'm like, what is this beast? But and it's so interesting because and I know how he did it, right? He was so conditioned to be this person that's who he thought he needed to be. And so that's who he believed he was. And over, the last decade for sure, he's done a lot of work in fine-tuning himself and saying, this is who I actually am. And some people will like it and some people won't. Sometimes my wife will be like, who the hell are you? It's true, right? And it's okay because that's who he really is. And allowing himself to see that and show up as that, right? For you, it was responsibility. It was saying, I have taken on this part of me that it is over compensating, overacting in my life in a way that I'm leaning towards that place of martyrdom that I'm not comfortable with. That's not who I want to be. And so being in choice and saying, so what, right? How do I move that? How do I shift that? And it's something that we forget about all the time, particularly with assessments, right? We think we take an assessment once and that's who we are. And that's just not true. I've seen them change over and over again. And it is fascinating to me when we start to peel back those layers. It is empowering, right? To get to that place of saying, that's not me. I don't choose that to be me. That may be how I'm existing in the world now, but I know better. Right? It's very cool when we can take back that power. But how do we do it? Right? You talked about this shift. How do we start to like get this data? Because this is more data from these. Louise loves data too. We get this data, and clearly so do I. But we get it. And we say, okay, this isn't what I want. What is that? Because it's not like we just go, this isn't what I want, and then suddenly we go on the path to change things. It's this isn't what I want. And like, for me, it's we have the confidence to know we can make a change, to know we have choice? What is it for the two of you?
It's curiosity for me. Like, it's like, right? Like, he's like, oh, there to there. Even in that, there's a question, like, there, like, do I want to go there? Do I want that? Do I not want that? For me, it's curiosity. How could I get there? What could that look like? Why do I want to go there? I'm a questioner too, for tendencies, which all leans into that. But for me, that's the way forward. Is just the question mark on the end of a statement can change how I see things or what I think is possible, just literally by like an intonation at the end of a statement changes it for me.
Yeah, I think for me, it's well, one, when you have one of those realizations, and again, you know, people, the highlight reel, you hear about that, and then you don't hear about all the times you do it again and again and again and again, and go, oops, you know, oops, I did it again, and but being willing, I think, you know, part of my company is Grace Social Sector Consulting. Let's give ourselves some grace. So just knowing that you're not going to change overnight. It's an evolution. It's a gradual process. You're going to fall into those old patterns, and but I think the thing for me is being able to notice it and then make some choices about what I might do differently in the future. But then forgiving myself when I don't. Recently, I've been thinking about another one where I was talking about not struggling with asking for help. And I was thinking recently, talking about data also, that that's been like such a story that I don't do help. I don't, ask for it, that I actually need to start looking for evidence of when I do, to start changing that narrative that, I'm not stuck in that place. I can, I don't need to, the pendulum doesn't need to swing way to the other side, but it's not a given. And so, for me, that probably will look like building it into these kind of reflection and review processes that I already have set up. Because I am an INTJ and
yeah, INFP over here.
Okay.
but right on my computer, I have a sticky that says what you measure moves. And that's exactly what you're talking about, right? Is what are the data points? Where do I see that I'm already asking for help? Right? Creating that understanding that it is already there. So now you can build on it versus this is a whole big boulder that I've never tried to move before. And this feels really scary and overwhelming. It's like, oh, no. I already am doing it. So let me just find the proof. Let me measure that. And then let me see how often, like gamifying. I do love gamifying things. I hate tracking, which is why I have to remind myself to what you measure moves. But that idea of gamifying it, and in whatever way works for you, right? Because that looks different for everybody, but gamifying it and finding that like, ooh, can I ask for help one more time this week? Right? Challenging yourself, however that works for you.
Yeah. I think for me, just starting to pay attention to when I am and noting that. And then, I'll have to think about that because I've got my Duolingo streak too going. So they've got gamification down.
Yeah, they do.
So like, I have to figure out what my badges might be. But back to the Girl Scouts. What will my milestones be for learning to ask for help?
I just know that Duo, when he has those laser eyes at me at 11:30 at night, I'm like, oh, shit, I'm on my way. French for owl. See, I'm using my Duo.
Uo and buo.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, I just think too is like, when we're not asking for help, when we're kind of like feeling like we're on this island and we have to be doing all of these things that on our own, we really are like we're keeping something from others, right? Like we're rescuing people that don't need to be rescued, or we're stealing things that really belong to someone else. I try really hard when I think about asking for help to say, like, this is not my lane, but it's somebody's lane. And so if I am swerving all over the road, nobody can get where they need to go because I'm being that reckless driver. And yet so when I'm in my lane, I can help other people be in their lane. And I can say, hey, like, there's this whole other like stuff that you get to do because that's where you shine. That's where your genius is. That's where you get to use all of your strengths and superpowers. I don't have to be swerving all over the road. We get farther together than we do on our own. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for me, I think about, we talked about delegation. And recently I was just thinking about, well, there's some things in my business that I immediately, got help for. Like doing the audio editing of my podcast. I knew from the beginning, before I launched the podcast, I had no interest in learning how to do that. And so then what are the other things that I'm kind of muddling through and that someone else actually has expertise in doing that they could do so much better than the kind of ill-informed job that I'm doing right now.
I think of it from the energetic exchange point, right? When we know what it feels like energetically, we know what it feels like to be stuck. We know that really it's like we feel it in our bodies. We're not moving. We feel depleted. We feel exhausted. We feel stuck. And when we feel stuck, it is an energetic wake-up call to say, where can you shift some of this energy so your energy can be more free-flowing, and therefore also plugging that energy into others that can, right, that now you have the exchange. Now there's mutual nourishment. And so just from even an energetic standpoint, like we all get freed up when that, because I am a huge bottleneck and I know that. And I'm trying to pay more attention to the places where I am energetically stuck, and then finding, because so I can be a bit precise on how I want things done. And sometimes the people, Louise, don't shake your head at me.
I didn't. Nobody saw that. This is an audio recording.
Sometimes the people that I work with, it can be challenging, right? Because I do want things to be precise in a certain way. And that may not be everybody else's aesthetic or outcome desire. For me to learn that bottleneck doesn't mean I have to give up what's important to me. It's okay, well, if that's important to me, then what else needs to shift so I can focus on that? If it's really important, I've been working on an automation today that was like super important that I get done. I'm such a dork when it comes to automations. I love them and I get so excited when they work. I could have absolutely turned that over to somebody else, but I found joy in doing it. And so let me find the other things that I don't find as much joy, that I can let go of this needs to be perfect, the way, quote unquote, perfect, the way I want it. I know it's not perfect still, but the way that I want it, let me just be okay with giving that away. But it's really hard because we're so wrapped up in this idea that what we do is who we are and the value we give in the world. And it's so wrong. It's so wrong.
Yeah. And for me, I mean, there's some things that, if I had a higher volume, maybe it would be useful to hire somebody bookkeeping and accounting and things like that. But I don't know if I would go to the point of saying that it brings me joy, but there is a meditative quality to it. That's just, it's a routine. There's a certain, steps you take that is very different from a lot of the work that I do. And it's a nice kind of antidote in a way to just have an hour where it's something super, super tactical and simple.
Yeah. And I think that's absolutely why I love doing the automations. It's like, it's pure data. It's pure like, okay, I have to get into that complete logic strategy space where most of my time is holding a lot of energetic, like emotional, spiritual, energetic stuff, which I also love, but sometimes I just need to not be anywhere near that.
Uh-huh.
Just be with the machine. So when we talk about all of these things, let's bring this back to this idea of empowerment. That's where we started this conversation. How, like, in the journey of our conversation today, what do we think those elements are that are so important to stepping into living an empowered life?
Go ahead, Louise.
No, go.
I think for me, a big part of it has been slowing down, not trying to take on so many things, working on bigger projects, but fewer of them at the same time, and just giving myself more space and time to do other things, rest, get outside, move every day, meditate every day, have these practices, and meditation being both moving meditation and sitting or laying meditation that help you remember and just practice, like coming back. Oh, am I somewhere else? Am I in the future? Am I in the past? Or am I right here? So those are some things for me.
Yeah. I thought too, we kind of had like the three of us all had this like little ingredient, I think, that we said throughout our time together today. And it was around like confidence and curiosity and grace. And I think like when like that just feels like a beautiful soup that we all put together, right? And if we can find that, right, find that little bit of like that self-belief is like, yeah, I have the ability to change. I'm curious enough to explore what that could be, and I have the grace to be okay with however it turns out. It's like bam. There's a cooking. That was
thanks, Emerald.
Cooking. Thanks. Bam.
Emerald Lagasse. And it sounds like a delicious soup. It does. I think for me, Carol, it goes to a lot of what you were talking about, and it's finding those places to step into asking for help. I think a huge amount of empowering ourselves comes from empowering others to be on this journey with us. And it can be a one-time thing, right? It can be somebody you meet once and there's a connection for a moment to ask for support. Or it can be an ongoing thing in a relationship that you have, whether it's work or personal, or both. But there's something in there about the art of receiving for me. And I think we don't practice that enough, the art of receiving, and allowing ourselves to see just how often we are receiving the gifts, quote unquote, help throughout our lives. To me, that's a beautiful way to step into empowerment, but to also create opportunities of empowerment for others at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Love it.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Love our conversation today. Fantastic.
Carol, what do you want to tell people about anything that's coming up for you or that's going on in your world?
Well, as I mentioned at the top of the episode, coming up on my 4-year podiversary of Mission Impact, the podcast for nonprofit leaders who do want to do good in the world, but don't want to be a martyr to the cause. And I'm coming up where I'm launching a couple different projects with clients doing strategic planning. So that's going to be exciting. It's always fun to be in the start phase where they're mapping out their stakeholders and who are we going to talk to and how are we going to shape this process. And then personally, I'm very excited that I will be a grandma for the second time. My daughter will be having a little girl this fall. And so my grandson will be a he will have a little sister. So that's also exciting.
Aw, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's very exciting. I can't think about that. 14-year-old.
No.
No.
She is the appropriate age for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Louise, do we have anything? Do you have anything, or do we have anything coming up in the world? I mean, we just relaunched our new brand. So
we
this
did.
Empowered and Embodied Show, which is pretty exciting.
I know, right? And so folks can find us online at empoweredandembodied.show. Come check us out, see what we've got brewing. You just never know what you'll find there. You can also follow Kim and I and I was going to say all the social places. That's not true.
You can follow me in all the social places.
Yeah. I'm not that social. I'm on LinkedIn, so find me there.
LinkedIn, yeah.
That's really it. Because I'm not anywhere else. So tune in, please like, follow, do all those things that podcast listeners do. Do that to the show too, because every like and every follow just allows us to get out there and have other folks hear their stories that they need to hear to move them forward in a life that fits and feels good.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Carol, again for being here. We are so glad that you spent some time with us, and thank you, listeners, for joining us as well along this ride.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye for now.
Bye.
And that's all for this week's episode of the Empowered and Embodied Show. We hope today's episode has sparked something within you. Remember, we're all on this journey together. If something did resonate with you today, why not share it with a friend who might need to hear it too? You can find us everywhere you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling generous, leave a review. Your feedback not only helps others find the show, but also helps us understand what's most valuable to you. Until next time, be kind to yourself, stay curious, and remember, we're walking right alongside you. Thanks for being part of our community.